it could have been so much more tense and actually have a layer of depth to it. And I know people might say, oh, but the Terrifier doesn't have any depth, it's not supposed to have any depth, it's just kills and shock. And it's like, yeah, but I know what you're saying, but you can actually do that and deliver on those things, but with a layer of depth and sophistication that enhances that stuff. Welcome to the discussion about the Terrifier 3 with the Watts brothers. We're filmmakers, we're Christians, and we love horror films. Let's find out what we think.
So I'm still recovering from that.
Yeah, I was actually quite nervous going into that because I was worried about all this hype talking about it's the most gruesome, horrible film ever, people fainting and being sick. And of course you always hear that around these kind of movies, but more than the other two films, I felt hesitant because I don't deal very well with that kind of level of violence and gore. But I actually got through it fine, and I can't work out whether that is that because it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, or actually I'm just able to tolerate it better.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that was, your response was, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I thought I would have that experience. It was actually worse than I thought it was going to be, because I imagined that I'd find it quite funny, like the dark humour would come through. I think in the other ones maybe it did a bit more, and I didn't find myself laughing very much, and that worried me. And I was kind of sat there in some level of shock. It wasn't unbearable, like I have to leave the cinema. I mean, there was a point where I thought maybe I should, but I thought no, I can deal with this, and it's important to understand, however you want to justify it, that this is where horror's at, and obviously this is a very this is a huge film that's broken out from small origins, and has done better in the box office than Joker, which is just crazy that can happen.
It's kind of crazy that I feel like the Terrifier 3 now, or the whole franchise in fact, has become the darling of the indie film world because it's this example of a film coming up through very underground routes with a niche audience, controversial, sort of thing the mainstream shuns, Hollywood shuns, and it's broken out into the mainstream, and Hollywood is suddenly quite challenged by it in a certain way, and a lot of indie film fans, in particular horror fans, are celebrating it as this wonderful success story. And I get all of those things as an indie filmmaker. I want to champion anyone who comes up with a franchise having worked so hard and broken out into something that is growing, big audience, doing so well at the box office. But I suppose there are parts of me that wonders, like, what does it say about society that a film like The Terrifier is breaking out into the mainstream? Should a film like that actually remain a bit more underground, like with the video nasties of the 80s? Should a film like that be consigned to the top shelf in the video store and remain, with a lower profile? Because obviously you need quite a tolerance of gore and violence to be able to watch those films, and there's nothing really that redemptive about them. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you want to put that word onto it? I mean, it is gruesome, and it's disturbing. Those images will remain with you. But I think generally people are quite desensitized to this kind of thing, especially if you watch horror movies. Quite, avid horror fan, you watch the gory elements. But if you've never seen horror movies before like that, and you don't really watch horror, and you went and saw The Terrifier, I think you could be genuinely traumatized. Should it stay underground? Well, possibly. I think maybe it should. I mean, it is what you call torture porn of the most extreme. And it's not great filmmaking. It's not great storytelling. I mean, he's a fabulous character, and that's why partly I want to go and watch it, because I think that the character design's great, and the charisma around Art the Clown, and the production design and makeup and the effects are brilliant. And that's really what sold it. But it's not, in terms of the script, it's not a great script. The acting's okay. It's not that well edited. It's not that pacey. Some of it's quite dull. Interestingly, the bit when I actually thought, this feels like a good film, was the scene in the middle. So, warning, there's a spoiler here. But the young girl, the protagonist in it, who's a kind of nemesis of Art the Clown, gets kind of hounded to be in this kind of true crime podcast and to bring up all her memories of, the things she's been through with Art the Clown. And she kind of, talks, really powerfully about, what she's been through and pushes this young girl back who's just trying to exploit her. And in that particular scene, I think the acting was very good. And I thought, wow, this is how the film kind of should be.
Yeah.
But most of the scenes were quite flat and quite dull. And weirdly enough, it is quite boring. And you're just waiting, okay, what's the next kill going to be like?
Yeah.
How bad is the next kill going to be like? And that's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
But for me, that's not great filmmaking. And it's not even on the same level as Nightmare on Elm Street or, you know, all these kind of video nasties, Hellraiser and all those kind of movies that are very gory and comparable, even It and stuff. I mean, obviously it's more extreme than It, but it's not great. I mean, we're celebrating it as this, you know, champion of independent filmmaking that's risen through the ranks. But it's actually, got a lot of flaws within it. And that's my opinion of it in a nutshell.
I think that there are a lot of issues with the script at a script level, that it could have been so much more tense and actually have a layer of depth to it. And I know people might say, oh, but the Terrifier doesn't have any depth, it's not supposed to have any depth, it's just kills and shock. And it's like, yeah, but I know what you're saying, but you can actually do that and deliver on those things, but with a layer of depth and sophistication that enhances that stuff, so that you really feel the threat of those set pieces a lot more. But when you feel like you're plodding through kind of quite repetitive bits of drama and talking, you know, until you arrive at the next set piece, then it sort of diminishes the value of the whole film as a whole, but also those set pieces, because they feel like they're just strung together on a loose backbone of talking. And I think the scene you mentioned where she challenges the blogger who's got this morbid curiosity about her traumatic backstory, that's a good example of where you can really explore that there is something wrong with people who want to just exploit people who've been through terrible stuff with serial killers, and that needs to be called out. And that actually added a real layer of interest to the film.
That's where the depth is in the film, in that one scene.
Yeah.
Because that one scene, you know, it kind of shines a light on what's wrong with a whole generation of young people who have just lost any kind of moral code.
Yeah.
They just want to be famous, they just want to exploit, they'll do anything, you know, they'll sell themselves down the river, you know, to get another 100 subscribers or, you know, to make some more money or whatever, you know. And I think that scene was good. I wanted more of that. Unfortunately, it just didn't deliver.
Yeah.
And I don't buy the argument, well, you know, it's just about shocks and scares. There's no depth to the Terrifier, that's what it's about. Filmmaking, storytelling. Yeah. So give us the story. And there really isn't one. It's just cat and mouse. I mean, there was a lot of things that were, you know, levelled at Damien Leone in terms of it being misogynistic and, you know, objectifying women, this kind of thing. I don't know what I think about that. I mean, obviously that it does have, you know, a strong female, you know, hero in the film, protagonist, and you are rooting for her to, you know, to finally stand up to him, and I think she kind of does at the last minute in the film. She overcomes the horror, so it's not pure nihilism. Whether you can entirely defend that position. I mean, I'm not a big fan of reading gender stuff into films too much, because, you know, it's just about the character and, you know, what each character represents. I don't think he's necessarily come to it with that agenda at all.
And also, the violence is actually very equitable, is the way it's distributed, because he attacks men and women in the film. I don't think the Terrifier, he doesn't discern between anyone.
In fact, the men almost get it worse.
Yeah.
In this film. But, yeah, I don't think that's really... Well, I think if there's exploitation going on in the film, it's the audience.
Yeah.
You know, it's pulling us in. It's appealing to, like, you know, a kind of baser instincts of how bad's it going to be, you know, and how shocking, horrible it's going to be. And, yeah, it gets through people through the door. It's obviously a huge commercial success. But is it good filmmaking? No.
The film actually had a lot of mixed metaphors going on as well, because obviously it explores Art the Clown around Christmas time. He dresses as Santa. You know, that's a cute, interesting device, because Christmas is a time for family and love and celebration and so on. Fair enough. And there's, you know, really quite a fun scene in the bar I quite enjoyed, where Art the Clown gets very excited to meet Santa. And there is some tension around what's going to happen in that scene, because you know it's not going to end well with Art the Clown interacting with adults, you know, in a bar like that. But then towards the end of the film, this sort of more the religious symbolism around Christmas starts to come out, and you've got this, spoiler alert, crown of thorns gets passed around, and then you've got the kind of the uncle character. His decapitated body is splayed out in a sort of like a crucifix shape on the wall, and his kind of guts are coming out. And you know, as a Christian, I'm watching that going, okay, what's the meaning of this reference? You know, are you going to make something of that? If you're going to reference Christianity and the nativity scene, and there are a few shots of that kind of thing, and there's a scene in a chapel, then do something with it. Do something profound with the meaning of all of that. And I think interestingly, the other films didn't seem to go to do that. They didn't bring in these external symbols around, you know, religion into it particularly. And even then, when Sienna is being, you know, hounded at the end, and she's trying to, you know, she's trying to block herself from being invaded with a kind of evil presence, if you like. The character whose name I forget, who's doing that, you know, says, you know, there's no hope, there's no God, you know, just let go, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, so now we're talking about, you know, sort of nihilism versus religion here, and you're trying to use that as a weapon. It's like you're going beyond Art the Clown just being a violent slasher killer, and actually you're trying to remove the soul of somebody, crush somebody so deep, you know, and part of that is like taking God out of the picture. And I thought that's quite interesting, because the film could have gone there and brought in all of that, but that would fundamentally change who art is, because it would give art some sort of motivation. It would give art some raison d'etre, if you like, you know. Whereas actually part of the interest in art is he doesn't have a reason for doing what he's doing. He's just purely psychotic and does what he does. So the film kind of is, I think it's caught between knowing quite which way to go. Is Art the Clown someone who just does stuff because he enjoys the violence? Fair enough. Or actually is there some kind of bigger worldview going on, and this portal to hell that opens up as well? What's that about? That wasn't explored very fully.
Well, I think that I didn't even realise that he was a demon until probably this third film. So either I wasn't paying enough attention, or it wasn't explicit enough that he is actually a demon. I thought he was a kind of twisted human psycho killer. But obviously it's very hard to kill him, so it did start to feel like there was something supernatural behind him. But yes, towards the end of the film, it did become like an exorcism movie for, you know, a few minutes. And Sienna has the crown of thorns on, so she's like the Christ-like figure. She has both her hands bashed in. You know, that was very, you know, reminiscent of the Passion story. And after Art has been defeated, you know, with the sword, her hands, like a stigmata, are kind of cut open, but then they're kind of healed in front of her. So there was something going on with that.
There, yeah.
But I don't think it was fully developed.
Yeah.
But there was an element of, how's the power of Christ overcome the evil here, and Christmas is restored. I mean, everyone's dead pretty much at the end of the film, aren't they?
But Art the Clown just sort of gets on a bus at the end of the film. So it is strange. Like I say, there could have been something there with the religious symbolism. You could have developed the demonology, and yeah, like you say, if there is this kind of universe with Art the Clown being a demon, and that's part of the theology of the film. I totally missed that in the other films, and I feel like there are loose threads being brought in, and it's interesting. To me, as a Christian, it's no surprise that in the third film, when he's trying to develop the story and push it further, that Damien is reaching for symbols and meaning outside of Art the Clown's just a guy who goes around killing people for no reason, because naturally you want to start adding depth and complexity to your story, because otherwise you're aware it could just be written off as a complete repeat of earlier films. That's a natural instinct, and it's no surprise to me as a Christian that he's reaching for the religious symbolism and Christmas and so on. It just happens to be very confused, as is often the case with, I presume Damien Leone maybe is not a Christian. I don't know what his background is, that's just a guess. But he could have done with actually really settling in his mind what the meaning of all of that was, because otherwise you're just throwing these things together and hoping that it sticks in some meaningful way. And for me, I'm not sure it did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, with the carol music and, you know, the you know, the nativity and this kind of, you know, Christmas imagery and the Santa Claus and the children, it all sets up this kind of innocent world of cozy family. That then is, you know, then is devastated by the evil of Art the Clown. So I can understand to a degree why he does that, and he's playing with genre, of course, isn't he? Because it's like, it's no longer just a Halloween film, you know, which I think it always started out at Halloween, the previous films, you know, and it's all based around that, and then Art becomes Father Christmas, and that there was some fun around that, and it is playful, but it's not as funny as it could be. I think I mean, you know, if he had a good comic writer or somebody who understood dry humour or dark humour, he could have got a lot more laughs out of the film, which you need to recover from the extreme violence. You know, and there is a filmmaker's joke in there somewhere, a horror fan joke, with the bus driver at one point, I think, gets asked by the lady on the bus, I think it is, are you into horror movies? And he says, I'm more of a rom-com kind of guy. I don't like all that kind of thing. And I think it's quite funny, more of a rom-com kind of guy, because obviously he's in the middle of one of the most violent films ever made. And then he says something like, you know, I like Frankenstein, the classic, like that. So there's little moments in it. I thought, that's fun. I just wanted more of it. You know, and it's so ultimately, I think I came out of the cinema feeling a bit shortchanged. It wasn't as good as the others. And I felt pretty bleak. I felt a bit empty when I came out. But, you know, I mean, I don't know what other people are saying about it right now, you know, whether people like it or not. I mean, it certainly delivers a lot. If you want the blood and the gore and the killings, it delivers all that. But for me, that's not enough.
No.
You know, and like I say, there was times when I was genuinely kind of feeling a little bit, what am I going to do after this? What am I going to have for dinner? And you don't want to be thinking that in the middle of a film. So in some ways, I hope there isn't going to be another film. There probably is, because it's set itself up nicely, and obviously the box office is huge, and as long as money can be made, I imagine they'll make another one. But actually, I personally feel, okay, I'm kind of done with that now. I want more than that from this franchise, and it's just not delivered.
It would be interesting to see, if he does make another film, where he would go with it, because in a sense we've seen everything, or nearly everything, you could imagine that Art the Clown could do. I mean, there's an infinite number of ways you can kill someone, but they're all iterations of a certain way, aren't they? You know, we saw in the first film a woman being, you know, cut up through the middle of her body, hanging upside down, naked. You know, and in this film we see something similar with the guy in the bathroom. And they're all just a spin on the same kind of idea. And I think even the hardcore kind of gore, body horror, you know, bloodhound fans of horror, even those types are probably going to be wanting something a bit different. But can a franchise deliver on that? And I think it's interesting if you look at other franchises, like let's say the Halloween franchise, you know, where you've got a villain who you know, is blank-faced, very little characterization about them other than he's just unstoppable, and there's sort of seemingly no motivation behind what he does. It's that franchise has managed to develop and continue, and people seem to like the later films, the more recent ones. But you might say, well, how have they managed that? Because actually there's not a lot to the villain, but I think there's a lot more going on with, you know, the Jamie Lee Curtis character and the other characters and what they're going through, and the psychiatrist, you know, who's dealing with Michael Myers. They've found ways to try and develop that world and make it interesting, and of course build up to huge set pieces as well. So yeah, perhaps there is scope to do something with it, but I think it's going to rest on developing the protagonists, you know, the people we're supposed to empathise with and understand. I think it's going to rest on developing them and their stories, and perhaps Art the Clown can just remain as he is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've said before in a previous video that we made that I don't come to it expecting very much. But actually, I realise that I do come to it expecting to be entertained and to be laughing to a degree. So I do find a lot of horror quite humorous. I just like the tropes. I can see them coming, you know. Couple move into a house, you know, and it was, you know, reduced price, and you know what's down in the cellar, and oh my goodness, yeah, you know, you can see it coming, you know, and you're waiting for the grandfather clock to, you know, to click in and all this kind of thing. Yeah, I unfortunately feel that the Terrifier is not ultimately delivering very much. It's not a good example of filmmaking, and if that's what's being championed, I'm concerned. And I think it proves that we've got whole generations of not very well educated, kind of dumbed down kids who are watching these films. So I think the audience will mostly be young. I think it is in general. I think it is 18 to 25 often for horror, isn't it? That tends to be the people going in the masses to see these kind of films, and it's just spectacle and titillation and stupidity, and yeah, that gets tiring, you know. And bring on the intelligent horror, you know, bring on the Hereditary, and you know, and Get Out, and back in the day Sixth Sense, and of course Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, and I mean they're miles ahead of the Terrifier.
Yeah.
They are, you know.
Yeah.
Not even just films like The Shining and The Exorcist, but even you know, some of their found footage movies back in the day, even films like Be My Cat and Creep, vastly superior. They don't have the box office, but we know it's not all about money. But in the industry, it kind of is. But actually, yeah, give me those any day of the week over this.
Yeah.
And I think that's my final word in it. But yeah, be warned, it's gruesome, it's horrific. It has some fun moments in it, but ultimately for me it's a bit of a thumbs down.
I think in conclusion we can say great example of an indie film breaking out to the mainstream, challenging Hollywood narrative that you have to spend hundreds of millions of pounds to win audiences over. That's clearly not true. It's toppled the Joker off the box office. So I celebrate that, and I celebrate the independent spirit to push through, retain the control of the film, and do what you believe in. But we want more. We want more from the Terrifier series than just the set pieces. I think if there's going to be a fourth film, it's got to go further. There's got to be a bit more development on the script. I hope that Damien Leone can be encouraged by the goodwill around what he's done, but perhaps will really take on board what I think people might be saying, which is, you know, there's more you can get out of this in the drama in between the set pieces. Nothing wrong with the set pieces, but give them some context and some meaning. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. What do you guys think? Interested to know. Let us know in the comments.